5 people presenting, but I'd also like to thank Judy Stukat for all of her role in helping with the presentation. So Diane Cantella will be one of the speakers, and she's from the Department of Neuroscience, Neurosurgery. Tiffany Fletcher and Caitlin Suey are from the Trauma Unit, and John Resnick and Andrea Thurlow are from the Neuro ICU. And I'd like to also let us all applaud for Donna, who won the Cameos of Caring for going to be talking about a patient that they took care of. Caitlin, is it?
Hi everyone, my name is Caitlin. I was actually the nurse who admitted Meg into the trauma ICU when she came in. So we just want to tell you a little bit about Meg. Meet Meg. She is a very active triathlete. She's a 2nd grade elementary school teacher. She participates in Ironman competitions. She loves biking, swimming, long distance running. From what her family and friends had told me, she was very active in all kinds of different things. Described as very dedicated, compassionate, and that became very clear to me just based on the support and how many visitors and stuff she had pretty much all the time when she was there. You could tell that she was involved in a lot of different things, and so it was kind of a shock when she had her accident. So on August 4th of this year, she suffered an unexpected and life-changing bicycle accident. She's actually training riding with one of her friends when she hit something in the road and flipped over her bike. And despite the fact that she was wearing a helmet, she landed on her head and had some very serious head injuries. So she was immediately rushed to Allegheny General Hospital in critical condition. And on admission, her multiple injuries were revealed. She had intracranial hemorrhage, acute subdural hematoma, bifrontal cortical contusions, clavicle fracture, and bilateral rib fracture. So here's the picture. You can kind of see some of the things that she had needed to be monitored and everything that she needed to keep her stable. So on admission, her Glasgow Coma Scale score was a 6. Now, we measure verbal, motor, and eye. So she, anything we say below a 9 is considered a severe head injury. So she was intubated in the ER. They kind of did her scans quickly. Like I said, she was pretty unstable. So we have up in the trauma unit what's called a ready bed. So they do all the scans and everything they need diagnostically down there, and then they rush them up to us. So she came up to the room. We basically put in all of her central lines, everything that she needed to monitor it, to get the medication she needed. And she basically came to the room and left straight to go to the OR for a decompressive cranium. That's where they removed the left portion of her bone flap. And that's in order to allow for the swelling. What happens was when you have brain injuries, you start swelling, you're bleeding in your head, and you also have a buildup of cerebral spinal fluid. So all that pressure on the brain causes all of her, your body doesn't function the way that it normally would. So if that skull flap is removed, it allows for the swelling, and it has much better outcomes. So they also put in a Camino monitoring thing so we can monitor her ICPs. And when she came back, we let her stay intubated because she was not breathing on her own, and highly sedated because you need to rest the brain with these injuries. The more you can rest and let the swelling go down, that's much better. So she was also on a 3% hypertonic infusion, which they're going to talk about later, but it pulls fluid from the brain to decrease the swelling. She was also on anti-seizure medication, and she was also on a research drug, which we'll talk about later. But all of these things, she needed in order to survive. So during her stay, she faced many complications and hurdles. So we obviously have to do very good neuro assessments in order to see if she's getting better or getting worse. So it's hard when you're on sedation medication such as propofol, which she was on a continuous infusion of. That will alter your mental status. So we would take the sedation off to see how she would do. Is she localizing? Is she opening her eyes? Is she following any commands? Anything like that. And I took care of her actually for her first couple of days. She was only in the trauma ICU for a few days, and she was moved up to neuro because she was mostly all head injury. But every time you would turn off her sedation or touch her or do anything, you could literally watch her heart rate increase, her blood pressure increase, her respirations change. We had an esophageal temperature probe in, and you could see her temperature rising. And these are all neurologic responses to brain injury. So this was kind of an issue. It's called brainstorming, and that was, we were trying to wean her off sedation to see what she could do on her own, but her body really wasn't tolerating it in the beginning. During this time, she had many CT scans, EEGs, MRIs, cultures to check for infection, and her extubation was actually prolonged because she had esophageal swelling, she was on steroids, all kinds of different things that come along with this. But after 12 long days, Meg was finally extubated on August 15th up in the neuro ICU. And on the 15th, day 15, she was cleared by speech and began a dysphagia diet. Despite her improvements, she was very confused and restless for many days. And interestingly enough, from what I've been told, the first thing she actually remembers is being at rehab at UPMC Mercy. So despite being awake and following commands, she doesn't even remember any of it. And that's kind of common with head injuries like this. She was having difficulty with short-term memory, and on the 17th, she went for an ORIF of her broken right clavicle, and she was moved from the neuro ICU to 9C, which is the CPAP unit. So now Joanna and Andrea are going to talk about her stay in the neuro ICU and going to kind of go over the treatment and the management of her head injuries.